for posterity. Um, so in particularly the art of Tàijíquán, but a lot of the internal arts, um, whether that be Aikido or Chuan, for example, um, we have this idea of we have elements that are considered yin, shapes, weight shifts, arm positions, energetic expressions, etc. And it's very, very easy for people to read a yin thing as the weak thing, and then the yang thing is the strong thing. Like, yeah, I get it. And they can be on board with that. Like, weak followed by strong followed by weak. It's like the teeth and gears. Like, it can't be all teeth because then it's not a gear. It's a rotor or whatever. Like, each provides function for the other. But generally, what I see quite often is that people will read the yin as weak and vulnerable, and they'll kind of grit their teeth and get through it because the good, workable, exciting thing is the other thing that follows it, that precedes it. And so, sure, I guess because of physics, we have to be vulnerable in order to be strong. And what I'd like to do is try and disabuse people of the notion that yin is weak. A yang move can be weak and prove to be weak. A yin move can be proved to be weak, right? You can have a weak expression of a yang thing. You can have a weak expression of a yin thing. You can have a weak result from your yang expression or from your yin expression. So I could think of weak and strong as the final score in a game. It can go either way. It's not really going to tell me an awful lot about the elements that were in it because it can go anyway, right? Um, so when we have a yin element, um, it, the yin element provides more flexibility, for example, than a yang element might, right? Um, if if the bow and arrow were not flexible, they wouldn't serve any function for me, right? I would just injure my fingers because the string wouldn't move, or the bow would just break instead of bend. And that bending, which we might describe as yin, and therefore weak, and like, oh, it's bending, like it's not strong, it's not an oak tree. Well, yeah, it bends, which is a storing of energy, which can be released, right? And of course, you could do it poorly and overdo it, and it cracks, or the wood wasn't cared for and it breaks, or you bend it too many times or too fast. Like there can be challenges to that, but the bending is a storing of an energy. There's a sense of creating a potentiality. There's a sense of drawing somebody into a hollow or a valley, or right. If I can, as a general, if I can get your army to move through that valley, right, and I have these higher positions available, I like that plan. Like that, you have a one way in, one way out. I have high ground. Like that's pretty good. If I can get you into a valley, that's good. So you could say, well, the valley is weak. That's the female one. And why wouldn't you? Well, that has a lot of power to it. It can be a problem too, but so can anything else, right? So it isn't about is it strong or is it weak? Could it be a problem? Could it be done too wrong? Could you choose the wrong choice? Could it be beaten? Anything could be to all of those questions. But I don't want to be practicing my art of Tai Chi Chuan thinking to myself, oh, here's the old ladies in the park part, but that lets me have the part I love that really would actually work. And I guess we have to do this in order to do this. No, I get to do this. This is its own power. This has, for example, the power to draw you out of your route, draw you out of your posture, draw out of you out of your range and your vector. This has the power to load my firing power, right? This has the power to deflect which provides an opening for me to, do something more yang. Um, so as we're practicing these arts, it's really important not to hear yin as weak, but I guess we have to do it because half of the stuff is strong, and that's what I love. The yin has as much strength as the yang, right? The other person that you're, fighting with may go home remembering all the yin moves. The scars and bruises in their body might have been all from your yin moves. They might go home just remembering your yang things that landed, but the story that they go home with is not necessarily the story that you expressed, right? They might remember the yang things that landed, but I know that how I got there was I lured them into the lair of the yin, and there's a tiger in that lair, as an example, right? But certainly drawing somebody in a yin fashion can be itself the success. That can be how I draw them off balance, throw them to the ground, pull them out of their range, bring them into, a choke or whatever I'm going to do. Um, so I think it's imperative to have a good language in your mind, and I don't want to here install that language, but um, what do you hear when you hear yin, right? Do you just hear, well, it's a readying for the yang move that actually has value, that I value? It might be true that you value it, but that is not a fair conclusion to make about whether or not it has value or it is the thing that is valued, right? Um, so it might be that I value the yang stuff, and I use the yin to charge them up, and I love the yang stuff. That's fine, but it doesn't mean because you value it, it's what's valuable. It's what's valued by you, and hopefully over time you'll value all of it. So we start to feel in our practice that this is as constructive as that. This is as constructive as that. This is as constructive as that, and so forth. Um, so check in with yourself when you hear the word yin. Maybe it's just in your own head, maybe it's your teacher, maybe you're reading it, maybe it's just in your notebook. What do you really hear? Because you don't speak ancient Chinese. What do you hear when you hear yin? Do you just hear relatively weak, feminine principle, blah, 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 I guess we have to do it? Or do you feel this can be powerful, this can be winning, this can be strong, just like anything could be, right? Do I feel it as its own thing, not simply the thing that leads to the other thing, right? So that's important to do. And what kind of thesaurus is in your head? What do you hear? I don't want to tell you what word would substitute because when you really understand yin, it's a great word, so just use that. But for now, for the beginner and intermediate student anyway, what do you hear when you hear it? Do you hear that it has a strength? It's a different type of strength than the yang strength, that literally they're adjectives, the yin and the yang, but it is a strength. And it could be a weakness, but so could yang, right? It's an adjective to describe a quality. And what is that quality to you? And make sure that you don't simply default to powerless, right? Because we hear the word yielding when we hear yin a lot. Like, this is yielding. So that sounds like survive a bunch of punches until they say it's the end of the Rocky movie, and then, just get mad and you obviously win. It's the end of the movie. And that sounds like yielding. But yielding doesn't have to be that. You can be tactically yielding, you can be strategically yielding, and that's one of the main thrusts philosophically of the art of Tàijíquán, is to learn the power of yielding, the strength of yielding, the value of yielding, which is not simply firing new things at new angles, that newly shaped weapons, all the different martial arts that have all the ways that we fire. It's yielding to your expression. And then when we connect to it and lead it out of its root, out of its balance, out of its vector, out of its range, out of its power, right? Then I take you out of your power, stability, strength, right? Equilibrium. And I can actually generally apply even less sort of net energy to finish you because you're finishing yourself with the help of my yielding connectivity. Okay?